And let's talk about that. Some COVID breakthrough cases to tell people about. 8 members of the Yankees organization testing positive for COVID this week. They were fully vaccinated. They did get that Johnson & Johnson vaccination. We're also learning now that talk show host Bill Maher tested positive, and he is also fully vaccinated. So how common are these breakthrough cases? Is the message, it doesn't mean you can't get it. I guess that's what's going on.
Remember, the vaccine was developed to prevent hospitalizations and death. And that's exactly what we're seeing. If you look across the stats in New York as well as other places, those admitted to the hospital, for the most part, have never been vaccinated. Less than 1% of the COVID admissions are now in people who have been vaccinated. So the vaccine's performing exactly as we wanted. You're not getting into the hospital, and great news, you're not dying. We didn't say that it would prevent 100% of vaccines, 100% of illnesses. And that's what we're seeing both in the Yankees as well as other places. But I want to remind people that amongst those who are sick, they are infected rather, they are not sick. They could potentially pass infection. And that's why if you have been identified as infected, you do need to isolate. We'd rather you stop that track of passing infection from one to the other at that time.
Yeah, and I was just thinking about that. If I get the vaccination, I'm asymptomatic, that could be a problem.
Well, it could be a problem, particularly to the elderly or comorbid amongst us, because if they get sick, they may be a bit sicker than you and I that maybe just had an asymptomatic infection. And that's why we are continuing to encourage people to get tested, because if we're testing and we see that you're infected, we can then preemptively say to you, please stay away from a crowd, stay away from other people, isolate for the few days. So again, the good news is if you're vaccinated, you're not going to get sick.
Yeah, so maybe a good reason to wear the mask even if you're vaccinated.
It really depends on who you are and what's going on with you. And again, I encourage people to speak to their physicians. They know that person's health best, and that's who should be guiding them.
All right. So, by the way, the Yankees team did, as we mentioned, test positive for COVID. They took the Johnson & Johnson vaccine, and the efficacy was slightly weaker. We've talked about that for the J&J shot. Is that the reason why this happened? Should people be concerned? How do we flush that out?
So I think the data right now is lacking. As you know, we are doing something called a college study. 20 universities across the U.S. are looking at 18 to 26-year-olds who have been vaccinated and having them swab their noses every single day for 4 months so that we can get a sense of the bigger picture. Is it the vaccine? Is it the super spreader event? Or is it the patient? Until we have those answers, it's hard for me to say, was it the J&J vaccine? Or was it the close proximity those people had to one another? Or were they all related to a super spreader event? And remember, we really don't fully understand how those super spreader events occur. So we need all that information, but suffice it to say that should not stop you from getting any of the vaccines at this time.